The extreme cold wind bit like a dozen dull knives, slithering into the cracks of my torn clothes and into my bones. I curled up in the corner of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the campus back hill, my entire blood seemingly already frozen into ice shards. My eyelids were so heavy as if weighted with lead. With every inhale, my lungs burned with a piercing sting. Not more than 2 meters in front of me, Clear stood there, wearing the high-grade cold-weather coat I had spent more than half a month of living expenses to buy. She clasped my last warm glove in her hand, chewing on the remaining high-energy compressed biscuit in my possession. "Vivian, don't blame me." Clear looked down on me from above. The face that usually appeared so pure and innocent in the dormitory now twisted and cold under the dim snowlight. "The blizzard is getting worse. The rescue team can't get in at all. The supplies here are enough for one person to hold out until help arrives. You've always been healthy, just endure a little longer and you won't die." I gathered the last of my strength and stretched out a finger that had already turned purple and gone numb toward her, my throat making a dry cracking sound. "Clear. That coat is mine. Please. Yours? Now it's mine." She lifted her foot and gave a heavy kick to my frostbitten wrist, her eyes devoid of any warmth. "If you're to blame anyone, blame yourself for being so stupid, for believing me about everything." She hugged a full package of supplies and, without hesitation, turned and walked out of the warehouse door, conveniently locking the thick iron door from the outside. The last glimmer of light vanished. Cold, dark, and despair, like a giant wave, swallowed me completely. My breath grew faint, my body temperature rapidly drained away, and in the boundless agony and regret, my consciousness sank into eternal night. "Vivian! What are you staring at for? The indoor air is so stuffy, how can you not breathe properly? It's good to absorb fresh air, I've opened the window." A sharp, slightly coquettish voice suddenly exploded beside my ear. I suddenly inhaled a breath. A warm, dry air filled my lungs at once, carrying a faint lavender fragrance. No biting pain, no freezing wounds, and no deathly silent warehouse. I opened my eyes wide. The sun streamed through bright glass onto the desk, and tiny dust motes floated in the air. The electronic calendar on the desk clearly displayed the date, November 12th. 3 days before the blizzard struck. I lowered my head and looked at my own red, intact, even still warm hand. My fingertips' touch was real, making my heart race wildly. I had come back to life. I had miraculously returned to 3 days before the catastrophic, freezing blizzard burst onto the scene. "Vivian, I'm talking to you. Did you not hear me?" Following the sound, Clear stood by the dormitory balcony door, pushing open that large aluminum sliding window. The cold wind outside immediately roared in, blowing the papers on the desk into a clattering frenzy. In my past life, on this exact day, Clear, under the banner of ventilation for natural healthy living, forcibly opened the dorm window. I had kindly warned her that the weather report predicted strong cold air and that opening the window could cause a cold, but she cried in the dorm group chat, saying I was domineering and careless about classmates' health. Later, the blizzard struck without warning, temperatures plunged dramatically. It was her crying and begging me to leave the dorm to retrieve a package and find supplies, and in the end she lured me to the back mountain warehouse and killed me. Looking at this hypocritical face before me, I restrained the hatred that almost tore my chest apart, and a cold, gleaming arc slowly curved at the corner of my mouth. I did not, as in the previous life, get up to close the window, nor did I utter a single word of persuasion. Instead, I stood up, even stepping forward to help her open the window a little wider. "You're absolutely right, Clear." My voice was unusually calm, and my eyes clear and sincere. Late autumn to early winter, the indoors are most prone to bacteria. Opening the window for ventilation is indeed very necessary. Since we're ventilating, is opening such a small crack enough? Why not open it completely? Clear looked surprised for a moment. She clearly didn't expect that I, who usually hates cold, would react this way today. "You aren't you cold?" she asked, probing a bit. "Cold? This is called being refreshed. I smiled at her, my tone incredibly gentle. From now on, the dormitory windows will be your responsibility to keep open. As long as you're in the dorm, they should stay open all day, okay? A trace of scheming satisfaction flashed in Claire's eyes as she quickly nodded, no problem. I love fresh air the most. Watching her smug face, I quietly let out a cold laugh in my mind. Claire, not only did I not refute, but I raised my hands in approval of her opening the window, a hint of surprise flickering in my eyes. But soon, that surprise was hidden beneath her signature pure smile. Vivian, I knew you'd understand me best. Unlike some people, who don't care about quality of life at all. Claire climbed up the pole extremely quickly, one hand, as she spoke, casually pulling out her phone and deftly opening the live stream interface on a social platform. In my previous life I thought she was just a little girl who loved sharing daily life. Later I learned she had been working online to build a persona. With the gimmicks of ultra-minimal natural dormitory style and pursuit of extreme primitive health, she attracted quite a few fans and even landed a few small brand ad collaborations. Everyone, today is another day of insisting on full indoor ventilation. Claire instantly switched to a coquettish quaver as she held the phone camera toward the curtains fluttering in the cold wind. Although the outdoor temperature is a bit low, fresh air is good for the body. Breathe more fresh air to boost immunity. Please don't stay cooped up in the polluted air just for a little warmth. The cold wind swirled with dry leaves and surged into my neck. The dorm temperature dropped drastically, and the originally warm room instantly felt like an ice cellar. In the past, I would have quietly used my clothes to block the draft, or politely persuaded her to close the window a little. But at this moment, I simply sat in my seat quietly, smiling as I watched her perform. Claire, your idea is really amazing. I suddenly spoke, my voice loud, ensuring it could be clearly recorded by her phone's microphone. Since you advocate environmental health and ventilation, let's set a rule. From today on, day or night, our dorm window must never be closed. Whoever closes the window secretly will be the culprit, destroying the dorm's healthy environment, okay? Claire was choked by my sudden words. In front of the camera her expression froze for a split second. But in the face of the barrage of comments in the live stream saying the lady is so self-disciplined and is this the healthy lifestyle? She was in no position to back down. That, of course. Claire gritted her teeth, forcing a guarantee to the camera. Everyone, witness for me. For everyone's health, I, Claire, will take the lead and never close the window. You all heard it, Claire is a responsible good roommate. I clapped, smiling as I added fuel to her persona. When she turned off the live stream and saw me standing there in a thick down jacket organizing my desk, the corners of her eyes twitched involuntarily. Vivian, why are you dressed so thick in the room? She muttered softly, the thin shirt on her body already shivering in the breeze. My body's weaker, not like you, the cold-tolerant expert. I didn't even lift my eyelids, my tone full of inevitability. You're healthy, more wind can boost your resistance. I have a poor constitution, so wearing more clothes doesn't hinder your ventilation, right? Claire was speechless, only managing a sheepish smile as she silently returned to her seat. By afternoon, I claimed I needed to go to the library for materials and left the dorm. Just as I stepped out of the dorm building, I pulled out my phone, deftly opening the campus forum and various social platforms. Claire's recent short video titled Experience of Indoor Window Opening in Winter already had many likes. I didn't hesitate to register an anonymous account, left a comment under her video, and even bought a small amount of traffic to help push her influence. This sister is truly so positive and energetic. I heard that their dormitory is planning to challenge not closing the windows for the entire winter, truly putting into action environmentally friendly and healthy living, and I must support it. I suggest everyone keep paying attention. This comment was quickly pushed to the front, and many onlookers started commenting in to-do fashion, even shouting the slogan first person to keep windows open in winter. Not only that, I quietly returned to a corner of the dormitory hallway. Through the narrow glass window on the dormitory door, I clearly saw Claire, taking advantage of when no one was in the room, holding a small utility knife, sneaking to the edge of the balcony's sliding window. Her eyes flickered, carefully using the blade to trace along the rubber seal on the edge of the window frame. As she moved, a long crack opened in the seal, and the sound of cold wind howling through the gap instantly grew louder. In my previous life, I complained more than once about the poor ceiling of the dormitory's sliding windows, drafts running rampant. I reported it to the housing management several times with no result. It wasn't until just before my death that I learned the seal on this window had already been destroyed by Clear herself before the blizzard even began. The reason she did this was to let the indoor temperature drop faster, thus creating the false hype of no matter how bad the weather, I will insist on opening the window for ventilation, in order to attract more attention and traffic. I looked coldly at this scene and did not interrupt her immediately. Instead, I naturally pulled out a high-definition recorder and a hidden camera that I had long prepared, capturing every step of her vandalizing public property and deliberately cutting the seal without omission. In the video, Clear's crescent moon smile, scheming and greedy, was enlarged clearly. After cutting the seal, she seemed not to be satisfied and pulled out a bottle of water, pouring it into the gap along the window frame track, attempting to create the illusion of natural aging and damage. Watching this series of skilled operations, the last trace of humanity in my heart was completely extinguished. Clear, for that amount of ridiculous traffic and vanity, you personally turned the dorm into an ice cave where wind and snow raged. In my previous life I bore all the consequences for you, drained your last value, and cruelly abandoned you. In this life, you alone shall swallow the cause you yourself planted, intact, without change. I put away my phone and filming equipment, a cold smile curling at the corners of my mouth, and turned to step out of the campus. The moment I stepped out of campus, the cold air hit my face, and the leaves by the roadside trembled in the whistling wind. Based on memories from a previous life, this century-old super-strong blizzard, an event that happens once in decades, wasn't just another ordinary cooling-off process as the Meteorological Bureau initially predicted. It would spread at an unbelievably terrifying speed, freezing the entire city solid within 48 hours. The blizzard would crush the high-voltage grid, freeze water pipes, and cause widespread power, water, and heating outages across the city. Rescue teams wouldn't even be able to bring in heavy snowplows. In that previous life, I, unprepared, was duped by Clear into giving her all the emergency rations after the water and power failed, and she devoured them all, discarding me as trash. This time, I would never make the same mistake again. I headed straight to a high-end serviced apartment near the school. Not only is the building solid with excellent insulation, but most importantly it is equipped with an independent power generator and double windproof heating facilities. I used up all my savings to rent a high-spec safe house on a middle floor, facing away from the wind to maximize shelter. Then I began to stockpile supplies like crazy. I didn't buy bulky but perishable ordinary foods. Instead, I bulk purchased high-calorie military compression rations, high-protein self-heating rice, highly concentrated chocolate, and large quantities of drinking water. To withstand the upcoming extreme cold, I also bought top-of-the-line outdoor cold-weather clothing, electric blankets, high-capacity portable power banks, multifunction generators, and 3 whole boxes of high-concentration warming paste and medical-grade antifreeze ointment. After continuously bringing all of this into the safe house and storing it properly, I finally felt a sense of security. In the evening, I carried a bag of newly bought chilled beverages and iced fruit tea back to the dorm room, strolling calmly and steadily. By now the dorm was already as cold as a large freezer. The windows were still wide open, and the roaring wind whipped the room's clutter into a frenzy. Clear, wearing a thin jacket, curled up in a chair, shivering, her teeth chattering faintly, still stared at her phone screen as if posing for the camera, pretending to enjoy nature. "Clear, look what I brought you." I pushed the door open, wearing an extremely eager smile, and placed the bag of chilled drinks on her desk. "Aren't you all about natural health and hot weather digestion? I've gone to great lengths to get you iced fruit tea and cold drinks. With the fresh air from outside, this is surely the ultimate form of extreme cold wellness." Clear looked at the cup of iced fruit tea steaming in front of her, her face turning green. Her already freezing fingers trembled slightly, but when she saw me holding the phone, seemingly recording the dorm's healthy living routine, she could only forcibly swallow the words of refusal. "Vivian. You're too kind." Clear forced a painfully stiff smile, took the iced fruit tea, and, under my watchful gaze, swallowed a gulp with trouble. The cold liquid slid down her throat, and she shivered violently, her face turning even paler. By the way, Clear, I leaned toward her camera, speaking exaggeratedly to her fans, you all might not know that Clear's cold resistance is simply unrivaled. She's told me that she loves standing in the wind during winter. The colder it is, the stronger her immune system. Even if the temperature drops to -10, or even dozens of degrees, she'll absolutely keep her window open while sleeping. Please all help me supervise her. When Clear heard this, the corners of her eyes twitched violently. She wanted to speak up to clarify, but faced with hundreds and thousands of Danmaku in the live room saying Big Sister is too hardcore, challenge accepted, sleep with the window open at sub-zero temperatures, she could only grit her teeth and admit, in order to preserve her newly established persona of cold-resistant minimalist, that, why yes. Everyone, don't worry. I'm feeling great, the colder it gets the more awake I am, I will never close the window. Watching her trapped, awkward state, my amused sneer only grew sharper. Night falls, and the outside sky is dark and eerie, like a huge stone pressing down on the city. The meteorological department finally issued a blue cold snap alert in the dead of night, but it still greatly underestimated the intensity of this disaster. The whistling outside gradually changed from a crisp rustling sound to a dull roar, and when it swept past the edges of buildings it emitted a sharp, ghostly wail. The dormitory temperatures plummeted. Clear curled up on a chair, a thin blanket draped over her, her face pale to the point of no color, and her upper and lower teeth clacked together uncontrollably. Her frozen hands, red with cold, clenched the corner of the blanket, and her gaze occasionally drifted to the aluminum sliding window ripped by the fierce wind. In my previous life, at this moment I would have proactively placed a blanket for her, boiled hot water, and even moved my only spare electric heater to her feet. Yet she would have taken all of this for granted, even when I advised her to close the window, openly mocking me for being fragile and pampered. In this life, how could I give her such warmth again? The neighbor 402 dorm's electric heater seems to be broken. A few girls are shivering violently. I looked at the group chat on my phone, stood up suddenly, and spoke with boundless sympathy and concern. Clear, with you here in our dorm as the extreme cold tolerance expert, you're in good shape physically, we don't really need an electric heater, right? I'll lend them our dorm spare heater to help them through this emergency. You don't mind, do you? Hearing the words electric heater, Clear's eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. She opened her mouth to stop me. I knew you were the kindest person. I didn't give her a chance to finish, pulling the spare heater from the back of a cabinet and shouting, you've promised tens of thousands of fans in your live stream that you would rely on your immune system to fight the cold, not artificial heating. If people see our dorm secretly using an electric heater, your natural environmentalist image will be ruined. I'm doing this to protect your fans. After speaking, I unhesitatingly carried the heater out and closed the dorm door tightly behind me. The corridor was icy as well, but I wore a cold smile at the corner of my mouth. I lent the heater to the neighboring dorm and used the excuse of the air is better there and there's heating to linger in the next dorm for nearly half an hour. When I returned to our dorm, the indoor temperature had dropped below freezing. Clear was trying to slide the window open a crack covertly. Hearing the door open, she sprang back as if electrocuted, and stood straight with a guilty look on her face. Clear, why are you standing by the window? I raised an eyebrow, looking at her in surprise. You're not planning to close the window, are you? Just now in the fan group some people asked whether you would continue the window opening challenge tonight. No. No! How could I close the window? Clear forced out a thin new smile that was more frightening than crying, and her voice trembled violently. I just want to see how strong the wind is outside. I love this fresh breeze. That's good. I nodded, then flashed an incredibly considerate expression, but Clear, you're still a bit far from the window. You're not getting enough fresh air. How about this, let's swap the bed positions. I'll give you the closer to the window spot so you can breathe fresh air from all angles, and you can also showcase your nighttime resistance to the cold to everyone on camera. No need. Really, no need. Clear waved frantically, her face turning pale. Why are you being so polite to me? We're good roommates after all. I didn't hesitate to act. I directly walked up and grabbed all her bedding and pillows in one go, cleanly and neatly throwing them onto the bed by the window. Your healthy persona is the most important. Tonight you'd better lie right below the window, ensuring the wind blows through you most thoroughly. Clear, watching the bed move to the window, slumped completely in the chair. She wanted to resist, but thinking of the bold vow she had made on social media today, and the watchful eyes of tens of thousands across the internet, there was no way out for her. By midnight, the wind suddenly intensified. The precursor to a blizzard had fully sounded. Blizzard with icy chunks swept violently through the wide-open window, instantly coating the floor and the desk near the window with a pale, frosty glaze. Clear curled up on the bed by the window, her whole body shaking violently from the cold. The cold wind hammered at her like a heavy hammer again and again. Her lips turned an eerie purplish black, and patches of red rashes and frostbite papules appeared on the exposed skin. However, every time she was overwhelmed by the cold and wanted to crawl up to close the window, I would timely roll over, pull out my phone, take a photo of her bed, and ask with concern, "Clear, are you okay? Do you want me to post a winter night's sleep with the window open update in the live stream?" That sentence felt like a choking spell, choking her throat. For the sake of that vague, illusory traffic, for that fake mercy of a tough guy mask, she could only grit her teeth and endure the sub-20 degrees of wind raging and roaring over her body. The next morning, the dormitory was already covered with a thin layer of frost. Clear curled up in bed, trembling all over, pallid as paper, lips frozen purple, the exposed joints of her fingers red and hot to the touch, signs of frostbite in extreme cold. She struggled to get out of bed, but as soon as she stood, her legs went numb and stiff, causing her to crash heavily to the floor. "Vivian!" Clear cried softly, voice extremely weak, I think I've frostbitten a little, my belly is cold, I feel unwell all over. Could you heat up some hot water for me?" "Hot water won't do," I said, with urgent concern, quickly pulling from my bag the pre-prepared secret weapon, a bottle of highly concentrated sweet fermented wine and several cans of condensed chilled drinks. "Clear, you've learned medical basics. Alcohol can rapidly dilate blood vessels, promote blood circulation, and warm the body quickly. That's the fastest way to dispel the cold." I personally poured the high-concentration rice wine into a bowl, handed it to her, my eyes filled with warmth and conviction. "Pair it with this high-sugar frozen drink to replenish a lot of sugar and energy. Guarantee you'll feel all warm all over when you finish drinking." In reality, alcohol can make you feel warm briefly, but essentially it works by violently dilating superficial blood vessels, accelerating the transfer of core heat from the internal organs to the outside world. In extreme cold, drinking high-concentration alcohol is like drinking poison to quench thirst. It only causes the risk of severe hypothermia to rise several times faster. And the icy, high-sugar drink would instantly irritate the stomach and cause a drastic drop in body temperature. At this moment Clear was already somewhat disoriented from the cold, and my confident explanation of the alcohol warming theory left her with no time to think, so she tilted her head back and downed the entire bowl of high-concentration wine and the cold drink. Really? Seems to be getting a little warm." Clear's face flushed with a strange, sickly red. She felt a warmth rise from her stomach, and was suddenly overjoyed. She had no idea this was merely an illusion of surface blood vessels forcibly dilating. The tiny amount of core body temperature she had left inside was being ruthlessly torn away and dispersed by this false heat. "Get some rest, I'll go check outside." I gently covered her with a thin blanket, then my gaze turned cold, and I silently moved to the balcony window frame. Seizing the moment while Clear finished drinking and lay on the bed dizzy and drowsy, I pulled out a colorless, tasteless powerful water and rapid curing glue, spraying wildly along the metal track and latch gaps of the sliding window. This, when exposed to extremely cold air, would absorb moisture from the air within seconds and instantly form a heavy block of ice harder than steel. After spraying, I even fabricated the illusion that the window frame had been deformed and misaligned due to violent winds, jamming the entire sliding window in a nearly 80 centimeter wide open position. Moments later, the wind roiled up. A bang boom, the sky turned black as eternal night, and the ultra-strong, extreme cold blizzard arrived faster and more ferociously than expected. The outdoor temperature dropped by tens of degrees in just half an hour, with winds mixed with dense hail and heavy snow, like crazy bullets, beating against the balcony and sweeping into the dormitory. The citywide broadcast erupted with a piercing alarm, emergency plan. A super-strong blizzard has struck the city. Power supply networks are overloaded and failing, widespread blackouts. Heating systems shut down. Accompanied by a crisp power trip, the dormitory's only skylight instantly went out, and the already faint heating pipes cooled to an icy chill instantly. The entire dormitory instantly became an icy cavern, dancing with wind and snow. The side effects of the alcohol now fully erupt. After the heat dissipates from Clear's surface, she is met with a deeper, more terrifying intense chill. She freezes, tears and mucus mixing into a broth, finally sensing the threat of death, and she screams as she lunges toward the window. The wind is too strong. No! I have to close the window. I have to close it. I'm freezing to death. However, no matter how hard she pulls and pushes, the aluminum window, welded shut by hardened ice and deformed tracks, remains motionless, as if welded right at the mouth of the wind. Stuck. How could it be stuck? Vivian, come help me. The window won't close. Clear screams, her voice laced with utter fear and despair. Clear, the blizzard is too fierce. The whole campus is out of power and heat. I put on the prep top-of-the-line cold-weather hood and thick-down jacket, heft the already-ready lightweight backpack, and without an expression, gaze at her. The temperature here is too low. I must go out to seek rescue and warm supplies. No! Don't go! What will I do if you leave? Clear lunges to grab my clothes, but her legs fail and she falls heavily onto the icy shards on the floor. Aren't you the one who loves fresh air the most? Didn't you say the colder, the healthier the body? I look down on her with a cold, knife-like gaze. Enjoy your extreme cold healthy life, then. I will bring back help as soon as possible. I decisively push open the dorm door, slip out, and outside the door lock the dorm door with an ominous lock. The wind and snow roared violently inside the narrow dormitory. Outside, the temperature plunged sharply to a terrifying -40 degrees, and the whistling wind, mingled with hard ice shards as rigid as metal, streamed through the window that was jammed in the maximum 80-centimeter gap into the room. The walls were instantly covered with strange, dense ice flowers, and even the water stains on the floor rapidly froze into a mirror-smooth thick ice. The dormitory had long become an ice point below no man's land. Clear lay on the cold floor, 2 fingers swollen and purple-black, desperately scratching at the locked wooden door, giving out desperate, animal-like whines and scrapes. Open the door. Vivian, come back. Open the door. Yet the corridor was silent, only the howling wind answering her. The extreme cold struck like a heavy hammer, inch by inch shattering her rationality. Her whole bones cried out in unbearable pain, and the remaining heat inside her body crazy evaporated under the effects of the extreme cold and her previous high concentration of alcoholic brew. Her whole body trembled violently, her nose and eyes mucus freezing into biting ice on her cheeks. In extreme despair, Clear dragged her unconscious legs and crawled back to the desk, shivering, prying open the phone screen with her swollen carrot-like fingers. She wanted to call for help from the outside world. But the blizzard had long since destroyed the main base station, and the network signal was reduced to a single weak dashed line. An emergency call could not be dialed at all. What crushed her even more was that she opened a social platform she had previously frequented, trying to post a plea for help, only to find the comments section already flooded with mocking remarks and check-in messages. Sisters, today is a super blizzard at -40 degrees. Are you still opening windows to ventilate? Incredible! No wonder you're the first person to withstand extreme cold. This eco-charity persona is topped up to the max. Everyone, don't worry, her body is fine. She said the colder it gets, the more awake she becomes, so there's basically no need for rescue. Looking at the praise and flattery that once made her arrogant, now they turned into omens pushing her toward the abyss of death. Claire collapsed with a thud, shouting a desperate, piercing scream. No one realized she was facing real mortal danger. All the fans thought this was just another hardcore extreme challenge she planned for more traffic. The box. The cold outfits. The supplies. Claire seemed to suddenly remember something, eyes bursting with beast-like survival instinct. She remembered Vivian had stacked several heavy suitcases in the dorm earlier, surely containing thick down jackets, high-calorie foods, and warming equipment. She struggled with all her might to crawl to my wardrobe and under the bed, frantically pulling at the locks with frostbitten fingers, ripping open a box. Yet what lay before her was only box after box of empty foam plastic, along with chalky gypsum chunks and discarded paper boxes I had quietly replaced long ago. Not a single high-grade cold-weather suit or warming item in the boxes, not even a crumb of compressed biscuit. And no. Impossible. Where are they? Where are the supplies? Claire cried out, madly flipping the boxes, while shredded paper swirled in the roaring cold wind. She had no idea that at this moment, I was sitting in the safety shelter outside the school, equipped with an independent generator and double-layer windproof insulated glass. The interior was warm and full of steam from freshly boiled hot soup noodles. I sat with my legs crossed, savoring the comforting meal, while through discreet wireless mini surveillance cameras installed earlier in a hidden corner of the dorm, I watched Claire in the sub-zero ice cove with cold, disdainful eyes, stage the scene of a trapped beast fighting for life. The blizzard raged for a full 2 days and 2 nights. By the afternoon of the third day, the roaring wind finally admitted a faint interval of calm. The mobile communication base stations that had been strangled by the blizzard were, with the help of emergency repair vehicles and temporary signal drones, intermittently restoring a small portion of regional network signals. In the narrow, cold dormitory, Claire, near death from the cold, was awoken by a faint phone notification sound. Her hands were already severely frostbitten, 10 fingers red and swollen, the skin covered with grim frostbite blisters and cracking wounds. Each slight tremor was accompanied by excruciating bone-deep pain. Summoning the last of her strength, she bit down on the touchscreen pen with trembling teeth and struggled to swipe open the phone screen. She thought this was the dawn brought by rescuers, that once the network was restored she could finally send out a distress signal to the outside world. Yet what her eyes took in was a surging, overwhelming storm of public opinion that could crush her completely. Just 10 minutes before the signal was restored, an anonymous account published a several-minute-long video and a series of extremely detailed evidence screenshots on the campus forum, citywide hot topics, and major mainstream social platforms. The protagonist in the video was none other than Claire herself. In the footage, the scene recorded with impossible clarity the moments before the blizzard hit, when Claire, in the dorm room while no one was around, had a wicked and greedy look on her face as she held a craft knife and carefully pried open the dorm's sliding window rubber seal. It captured her pouring water into the window frame tracks, deliberately damaging public facilities to create a natural damage illusion, and the ugly face of her plundering other storage lockers and stealing higher-grade cold-weather gear and high-calorie supplies from dorm mates. Even more clearly, it filmed every detail of her private tampering with others' lockers and theft. Not only that, along with the video, there were dozens of her social accounts used to fake traffic, spread false propaganda, and take illicit orders, plus chat screenshots of her viciously attacking and abusing dorm mates and fan groups while promoting a cult-resistant environmentalist persona. In an instant, the entire internet exploded in anger. Previously, fans and passers-by who had been blind to her and had liked and cheered for her, after seeing the true face behind the so-called disciplined eco-friendly expert, erupted with a level of rage unmatched. Oh my God. This woman has been lying from start to finish. For that ridiculous amount of traffic, she actually cut the seals and damaged dorm facilities? This is disgusting. She steals others' cold-weather gear to fund a persona and even keeps the window open to torture her dorm mates? This kind of person is practically a sociopathic lunatic. I actually thought she was hardcore disciplined. Turns out it's all set dressing and performance. She even steals others' belongings. This kind of shady internet celebrity should be banned, captured, and punished. Universities and police must come take a look. A person who deliberately damages public safety and steals others' property must be held legally responsible. The entire network's denunciations and curses swept in like a tidal wave. Claire watched as thousands of messages of punishment flooded the screen every second, her face turning from pale to a bizarre, deathly gray. The perfect hypocrite persona she had carefully cultivated for years, the foundation of her livelihood and pride, shattered in an instant, collapsing into a nationwide chorus of being hunted down. Despair and fear gnawed at her heart like snakes. Claire trembled violently all over, her jittering fingers finding the contacts of relatives and a few old friends, and she frantically dialed to seek help. After a long ring, the call connected. "Cousin. Please, save me. I'm about to freeze to death. Please help me contact the rescue team." Claire spoke through sobs and with utter despair, begging for help. However, the other end of the line was filled with extreme cold and disgust. "Claire, we've seen all those videos and posts online. Usually you take advantage of your relatives and friends, but privately you viciously insult us on the internet, making us looked down upon. Now the whole internet is coming after you for accountability. We don't have relatives like you who are morally corrupted and have sinister intentions. With such a raging blizzard, who would risk their life to save someone like you with a wolf's heart and a dog's lungs? Serve you right." Beep, 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 the cold hang-up echoing in the silent room. Claire collapsed completely onto the frost-covered floor, his eyes vacant, gazing at the pitch-black ceiling above. Tears spilling from the corners of his eyes instantly froze into icy spikes on his face. The blizzard, after a brief lull, whipped up a fierce howl again, but by then the distant city center already carried the muffled roar of heavy snowplows and the faint shouts of rescue team horns. The rescue teams were advancing step by step, but it would still take several hours to reach the university town area. In the dorm, the temperature had dropped to -35 degrees. Claire lay in a pile of icy debris, her consciousness already slipping into a semi-conscious state due to severe hypothermia. Her breaths were weak as threads, both legs and arms completely numb, and tissue and extremities rotted massively under the extreme cold. Just as she was about to completely give up struggling and let death swallow her, a gust of wind blew the fallen empty suitcase that lay on the ground into rolling motion. The luggage's inner layer had been knocked loose, and a yellowed slip of paper fell out from inside. It was a red ink-marked backup emergency supplies guide for the back mountain. The handwriting was Vivian's. It clearly stated, in case of extreme cold disaster, the basement of Warehouse No. 3 in the back mountain waste yard holds high-grade cold weather gear, a generator, and ample high-calorie compressed food. This slip of paper was deliberately placed in the suitcase's fake lining before I left the dorm. For Claire, whose legs were severely frostbitten and who was completely desperate, this slip of paper was like the last glimmer of light in a death trap. High-grade cold weather gear. A generator. Food. In Claire's originally dull and lifeless eyes, a sickly, frenzied greed suddenly flared. She had no ability to think about why Vivian would leave such a secret materials guide in the dorm, nor any mind to verify its authenticity. Under the pressure of death, this became the only life-saving straw in her mind. That's mine. All mine. As long as I get the cold weather gear and the food, I can survive. Claire clenched her teeth and emitted a beast-like growl. She could not stand, so she used her swollen, rotting, bone-exposed elbows to crawl bit by bit across the icy ground. The 80-centimeter gap in the stuck sliding window became her only exit. With her utmost effort, she crawled out like a ridiculous yet brutal scarab, along the windowsill, and crashed heavily into the thick snow outside the balcony. The cold wind cut at her fragile skin like a blade, but her obsession with survival and the instinct to seize resources drove her along the endless snow, step by step toward the direction of the campus back mountain. She did not know that the so-called back mountain warehouse was exactly the ice tomb from her past life, where she had worn my cold weather gear and stolen my food, sealing me alive inside. The terrain there lay at the windward mouth of the entire back mountain valley, with winds more than 3 times that of the flat ground, and temperatures several degrees lower than the dorm. There were no windbreaks, and no rescue supplies, only raging white disaster and endless nothingness. Half an hour later, Claire finally dragged her nearly broken legs and crawled into that familiar yet unfamiliar abandoned warehouse, her flesh and blood crumbling. However, when she used her last strength to slam open the torn iron door and fall into a ground mixed with dust and ice shards, she was met with nothing but empty, dead walls and a ferocious wind screaming through the hall. There was no basement, no cold weather gear, no generator, and not a single bit of food. Only in the very center of the wall stood a huge English word in red paint, "Welcome to your grave." Claire froze in place completely. The memories from a past life and the traps of this life exploded in her mind like thunder in that instant. She finally realized it all, from the initial encouragement to open the window, to the high-concentration rice wine, and to that top-secret manual. All of it was Vivian's personally tailored death trap for her. Vivian! Claire cried out to the heavens with a desperate and heart-rending howl, but the sound was instantly swallowed by the savage wind and snow. On that early morning when the blizzard had completely subsided, the dazzling sunlight fell on the thick snow, refracting a cold, dazzling light. The rescue team and heavy snow-clearing vehicles finally punched a path to the back of the campus. When the rescuers pushed open the half-ajar, shabby iron door of the abandoned warehouse, Claire was curled up in a cold corner. Her face was as pale as death, her legs from the knees down displayed a horrifying blackness and rotting blisters, and her body temperature had dropped to the medical near-death threshold. Although the medical staff had rushed her onto the ambulance and into the emergency room at the fastest speed, the prolonged exposure to extreme cold for tens of hours and the severe frostbite forced the doctors to reluctantly issue a notice: to save her life, both legs must be amputated at high level and multiple fingers on both hands must be removed. The once dominant young girl who had branded herself on social media as a natural environmental protection expert had overnight become a complete disabled person. Yet for Claire, the physical disabilities were only the beginning of the nightmare. Just as she had just finished surgery and was being pushed into a regular ward, I calmly carried a thick stack of legal documents and evidentiary materials, accompanied by a school representative, dormitory building manager, and several police officers, and pushed open the ward door. Claire lay on the bed with a waxy pale face and no lower body, her hands bandaged thickly. When she saw me standing at the doorway, intact and neatly dressed, the previously dazed eyes suddenly erupted with enormous hatred and fear. "Vivian! It's you! It's you who did this to me!" Claire's voice was hoarse, like a worn-out bellows, struggling on the bed as she cried out, "Officer! Catch her! She deceived me into opening the window. She deceived me into going to the back warehouse." The accompanying officer's expression was stern. He simply gave her a cold glance, pulled out a notebook, and said, "Miss Claire, please stay calm. We are here today to investigate a series of illegal activities during the blizzard and disputes over huge public property losses." I stepped forward and laid out the evidentiary materials on the bed in front of her. "Claire, according to the joint investigation by the school and the Housing Management Committee, there is sufficient evidence that before the blizzard arrived, you deliberately used tools to sever the dormitory window seals, damage the sliding rail, and privately inject water into the pipes to cause freezing, for counterfeit traffic and personal gain." My tone was calm, but every word cut like a blade. "Your actions directly caused the dormitory sliding windows to fail to close in extreme cold, resulting in widespread cracking and bursting of the main heating pipes in the entire dormitory building, triggering serious electrical grid short circuits and water pipe ruptures." I flipped to the next page of the bill, presenting it to her and her watching parents. "This is the loss list issued by an asset appraisal firm. Because of your deliberate sabotage, the entire dormitory building from the 4th floor to the 1st was flooded and frozen, destroying school and others' private property valued at over 2.4 million yuan. The school and the insurance company have formally filed a lawsuit in court, demanding full compensation." Claire's parents, upon hearing the astronomical figure of more than 2 million, trembled violently and collapsed to the floor in tears. Not only that, I looked down on the now deathly pale Claire, offering a coldly icy smile. "You privately stole my and other students' valuable high-end cold-weather clothing and personal belongings before the blizzard, and sold them on second-hand platforms for profit. The entire process has been fully recorded by the dormitory's hidden cameras. The amount involved has reached the threshold for criminal filing. The police have already filed a formal case. A huge bill for compensation, criminal charges, and the brutal reality of complete loss of the ability to walk, like three insurmountable mountains crashing down on Claire and her already impoverished family. Claire stared at the evidence and compensation notices, the sheets of paper with black and white text, her lips trembling violently, and the malice in her eyes finally melted away into boundless despair and limpness. In the white ward, the awful smell of disinfectant mixed with dead tissue pervaded the air. Claire lay slump on the bed, her eyes dully fixated on the ceiling. The numb feeling in her lower body constantly reminded her that she had already become a useless person who had permanently lost both legs and several fingers. At the door of the ward, a few court enforcement officers in uniforms and two case-collecting police officers stood with grave expressions, diligently checking the property list in their hands. Claire's parents knelt beside the bed, already having cried themselves hoarse, continually pleading with the officers. The old couple's already stooped spines looked even more weathered, their foreheads pressed hard into the floor, making dull thuds. But no matter how they begged, in the face of ironclad legal evidence, everything appeared exceedingly pale and powerless. Ms. Claire, given that you are involved in stealing other people's enormous assets, intentionally damaging public facilities causing millions in losses, and you currently do not meet the physical condition required for criminal detention, the court has ruled to grant bail and, in accordance with the law, frozen all of your bank accounts, payment accounts, and assets on online platforms. The enforcement officers coldly read the ruling, each word hammering into Claire's heart. I, wearing a crisp black trench coat, walked into the ward with a crisp step, neither quick nor slow. I pulled from my purse a financial tracing report and judicial audit documents recently issued by a third-party authoritative appraisal agency, and gently placed them on her bed. Claire, do you think the rewards and ad revenue you earned by stealing my goods online and fabricating a persona can safely flow into your own pockets? I looked down at her from above, with no mercy in my eyes, only piercing cold and ridicule. After judicial auditing, the down payments on property, vehicles, and all deposits that you previously acquired with illicit gains were all based on infringing upon my personal property and deceptive promotion. These assets have all been legally seized by the court and prioritized to compensate for the large losses you caused to the school and other victims. When Claire heard that the property and deposits were seized, her previously ashen face suddenly convulsed violently. That was the rise in social class she had painstakingly built over years, even at the cost of harming others. That was the only foothold she had to escape poverty in her original family and to survive in the city. No. No. That's my money. That's money I earned through my own efforts. Claire rasped, her sharp alarm bell of a screaming voice, frantically slapping the bedsheet with her bandaged, mutilated arm, her eye sockets tearing, bloodied tears spilling out. Vivian. You demon. Give me back my money. Give me back my house. Your money? I sneered coldly, and then unfolded page after page of asset mortgage and compensation agreements signed by her and bearing her fingerprints, right in front of her eyes. To pay the school's facility compensation and the victim's civil claims, your parents have, under your authorization, signed the property mortgage and settlement agreements. You're the only pre-sale property has been auctioned by court order, and the profits from all your platform accounts have been seized. In addition to the mortgaged assets, you also owe over $1 million in high debt, which you and your legal heirs will have to repay annually for life. I bent down and whispered in her ear in a tone only the two of us could hear. Moreover, those few online loans you privately transferred my assets and forged my signature to apply for, I've submitted all the evidence to the police. Do you think that was your startup capital? No, that was the iron chain that dragged you into the bottomless abyss. Every word, every sentence, is like a cold flying dagger, stripping clean of the last thread of dignity and hope she still possesses. Not only has she lost her healthy body, incurred the entire internet scorn and criminal accusations, but she has also been financially crushed back to her original form, even dragging the entire family down with debts they could never repay for generations. Ah. I won't accept it. I won't accept it. Claire let out a despairing, shrill scream like a vengeful spirit, the whole person sliding heavily off the hospital bed, slamming to the floor, thrashing and writhing like a worm that has lost its lower half. Her mother cried until she fainted on the side, her father's eyes overflowing with tears. The ward was a chaotic mess. I coldly watched her on the ground, disheveled and covered in tears, not lingering in the slightest with my gaze, and turned around to gracefully push the door and leave. The season of snowmelt has finally arrived. As the warm spring sun covers the whole city, the snow melts, roads reopen, and the once earth-shattering extreme cold snowstorm has become history. Life returns to normal, laughter echoes again in the campus, greenery buds on the branches, and everything is brimming with vitality. And I have also ushered in a comprehensive rebirth in my life. Relying on the calm adaptability shown during the blizzard, outstanding academic background, and the professional knowledge accumulated in my previous life, I passed the interview of a national top cold climate and environmental research institution with first-class honors and officially joined as a young researcher in the core project team. On the day the interview ended, the leader of the research institute kindly held my hand and smiled. "Vivian, your calm, decisiveness, and keen insight into disaster environments are our most precious assets here. The future is limitless." I returned a confident and proper smile. Standing before the tall floor-to-ceiling windows of the office building, overlooking the sunlit campus and city below, I took a deep breath of warm and sweet air. This life, I did not waste even a second of time. With my wisdom in coldness, I drove the demon that dragged me into hell in my past life into an eternal abyss, and at the same time personally opened my own brilliant chapter. In sharp contrast to this is Claire's ending. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, due to online vilification, a ruined reputation, and huge amount debt she had incurred, she had already lost any foothold. Her parents exhausted the last penny in the house and could only send the legless and fingerless, crippled Claire to a public free rehabilitation and elder care institution in a remote northern mountainous area with extremely poor conditions. The facilities there were dilapidated, even the basic heating in winter was intermittent. On a snowy afternoon, I wore a custom high-grade wool coat, delicate leather gloves, as a social donor, and met Claire for the last time. The simple room was devoid of warmth, walls peeling, and cold wind whistling through the gaps of the old wooden window. Claire curled up in a tattered wheelchair. The once delicate and pure face, which had relied on filters to draw countless eyes, was now covered with shocking frostbite scars and hollows, her eyes dull as dead water, lacking any vitality. Her lower body was bare, covered only by a torn thin blanket, and due to severe frostbite sequelae, her remaining limbs trembled uncontrollably in the cold wind, with intense pain. When she heard footsteps, she struggled to lift her head and saw me standing in the sunlight. Her cloudy eyes constricted fiercely, and her whole body trembled violently. "Vivian." Her voice was hoarse and dry, like wind-dried tree bark rubbing on gravel. You came to laugh at me." I stopped 3 steps away from her, looking down at her with no signs of joy or anger in my eyes, only a calm indifference that seems to see through dust. "A joke?" I gave a faint smile, my voice unusually clear in the cold room. "Claire, you're not qualified to be my joke. Today I'm here only to let you see how well my life has gone without you stabbing me in the back." Claire's breathing suddenly grew rapid, her hands gripping the armrests of the wheelchair tightly, her remaining fingers soaking with cold blood due to the overexertion. "You plotted against me. All of this was your setup." Her eyes reddened, she yelled in despair and madness. "You knew the blizzard would be deadly. You knew the windows were jammed. Yet you never warned me. You watched me fall into a dead end step by step, you devil. May you not meet a good end." Listening to her death struggle confessions, I gently adjusted the sleeve of my windbreaker, walked forward at a steady pace, leaned down, and whispered into her ear in a voice that only the two of us could hear, saying word by word, "Claire, do you remember the abandoned warehouse behind the school in the back mountains?" When the words "back mountain warehouse" were spoken, Claire's body was struck by lightning. Her eyes flashed with extreme fear. "In the previous life, during such a snowstorm, you took my cold weather coat, took my last food, knocked me down in the warehouse, and locked the iron door from the outside." A cold, chilling smile hung at the corners of my mouth, each word like a knife. "When you watched me die of cold in -40-degree wind and snow, did you ever imagine there would be a day like today?" Claire's mind exploded in that instant. Her eyes widened, pupils dilated violently, looking at me in terror, lips trembling but unable to utter a word. You remember?" "Yes, I remember everything." I stood upright, looking at her with the gaze of someone looking at a dead person. In this life, I didn't push you once, I didn't tell a single lie. The window was your choice to open, the persona you created, the seal strip you cut, the back mountain you chose to climb. I simply never told you that the blizzard could be fatal. Despair, terror, remorse, and boundless grief rose like a tidal wave to drown Claire completely. She finally understood what kind of horrific existence she had provoked. She thought she controlled everything, but since the day she woke up reborn, every step she took, every greed and hypocrisy, was sliding toward the bottomless abyss tailored for her by me. Ah. I'm sorry. Vivian, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please save me. Take me away. It's so cold here. It's really so cold. Claire finally collapsed, crying heartbreakingly, her imperfect arm desperately trying to reach my coat sleeve, like a dog on a wheelchair begging and kowtowing, admitting her fault. Yet I merely retreated a step in disgust, not allowing even a single thread of cloth to touch her. Slowly enjoy the cold here, Claire. I turned around and strode toward the door. This is only the beginning of the endless days to come. From behind, there came Claire's despairing scream and wailing like a cuckoo in distress, but surrounded by the raging wind and the heavy door, her voice quickly waned, ultimately buried beneath the cold howl of the wind. I pushed open the door of the rehabilitation facility and stepped into the blinding yet warm sunlight. The sky was blue as if washed, the sun's warmth soaking into me, bringing unparalleled warmth and steadiness. The raging snow and gloom had long since been blown away by the wind, and the pain and hatred of the previous life vanished in that moment. I smiled and looked up, ready to embrace my brilliant future. A half-year after the blizzard in the deep mountains, the cold wind remains like a rusty dull knife, seeping in through the gaps with a whistling howl. This is a remote northern mountainous area's extremely poor rehabilitation facility. Rehabilitation, in truth, is just a place to house those who are homeless and utterly powerless to work, a waiting ground for death. A dilapidated brick building rises from the ground, large patches of plaster peel away from the walls, exposing the dark bricks inside. Because of the lack of funds, the heating system here is effectively useless. Even in early spring, indoors it is so cold that one shivers uncontrollably. Claire curls up in a broken wheelchair, staring blankly at a small patch of frost on the floor that won't melt. Her lower body is empty. Her legs were amputated above the knee. The wound, repeatedly inflamed and rotting due to long-term dampness and extreme cold, emits a foul stench. Her mutilated fingers are wrapped in dirty bandages, and with every joint movement comes piercing, bone-tearing pain. Eat up! Hurry up! With a harsh scold, a caregiver aunt in a dirty apron slammed a chipped plastic bowl onto the table with a bang. The bowl held half-cold porridge, with a few pale pickled vegetables floating on top. Caregiver. Aunt. Claire's voice was hoarse, like an old windbag rubbing together. She painfully hoisted herself up using her broken arm, with a plea and a sense of humiliation. Could you add another blanket? Or stuff the window a little? It's so cold in here. And the cramps at the base of my leg hurt like needles. The caregiver rolled her eyes to the ceiling, hands on hips, disdainfully spitting and saying, "A blanket? Do you think this is a 5-star hotel? The whole facility has only a few broken blankets. It would be nice if there's one more for you. Besides, who doesn't know you back in university dorms as the big online celebrity who insisted on opening windows to vent and challenge the extreme cold for health reasons? Don't you like the cold wind the most? What's wrong with a bit of wind? It won't kill you." After speaking, the caregiver didn't even bother to look at her again, and slammed the door shut with a heavy thud. With a crash, the wooden door shook violently, and the cold outside grew even stronger. Claire's eyes swelled and red with blood, tears of blood forming as she trembled. She reached out to grab the bowl, but because her fingers were missing, she couldn't hold it steady, and it dropped to the floor with a dull thud. The cold porridge spilled out and instantly congealed into a sticky ice crust on the ground. Staring at the dirty spill on the floor, Claire finally could no longer bear it. She collapsed, pressing her face against the wheelchair's armrest and letting out a despairing, piercing cry. The caregiver's words weighed like heavy hammers, each clause hammering at her soul. Extreme cold health, ventilate by opening the windows. These were once the chips she used to gain traffic, to build a hypocritical persona, to torment Vivian. Now they have become the most vicious irony in the world, pressing down on the rest of her life. No one will pity her, no one will help her, not even the passing dogs would be spared by others from approaching. Don't touch that poison woman. She harmed people in the blizzard days and froze her own feet. Across the wall opposite her broken wheelchair hangs an old, color television set with blurry picture quality, occasionally flickering with snowflakes. At this moment, the TV is broadcasting a live nationwide weather and extreme cold research results press conference. In the frame, the camera slowly zooms in on the young woman standing at the center of the conference. Vivian is dressed in a sharp, elegant white high-end suit, her hair neatly styled, and she wears a calm, confident smile. Behind her, a huge screen displays clearly the caption, Chief Researcher of the Extreme Cold Environment Disaster Prediction and Warning System, Vivian. In the audience, countless journalists snap photos with flashbulbs, and experts repeatedly nod in approval. Dr. Vivian, may I ask what sustains your astonishing breakthroughs in the field of extreme cold disaster research? The reporter respectfully handed over the microphone. On TV, Vivian smiled gently, with clear and determined eyes, her voice conveying an elegance and composure that penetrated the screen, because I have truly felt the cruelty of cold. Therefore I am more aware than anyone that in the face of gales and blizzards, hypocrisy and greed cannot save anyone, and will push people into an endless abyss. Real safety always comes from sober cognition and an open heart. The audience erupted in applause. In the wheelchair, Claire stared fixedly at Vivian on the TV screen, eyes bloodshot, teeth clenched with a rattle, lips oozing blood. That was Vivian. The Vivian she had once mocked at will, the Vivian she lured to the back mountain warehouse, even used as a blood-sucking tool. Now, Vivian stood on the highest point bathed in sunlight, become a top-tier researcher admired by thousands, enjoying her supreme glory and a bright future. And herself, like a useless worm with a broken leg and a severed finger, curled up in a moldy corner, scraping by on scraps. Why? Why is it like this? Claire desperately struck the wheelchair with her mangled arm, letting out desperate and frenzied screams. I was the one who had the upper hand. I took the cold weather gear. I calculated you. The gale suddenly ripped through the old wooden windows tape, snow flew in from the gaps, landing on Claire's scarred face, icy and biting. In the boundless cold and pain, Claire's mind flashed to a scene from her past, the Vivian locked in the back mountain warehouse, the Vivian reaching out in despair through the freezing. At this moment, after half a year of hellish torment, Claire finally awoke to realization. There was no luck, no destiny. From the first day after rebirth, from the moment she foolishly pushed open that window, Vivian had long since seen through all her schemes and ugliness. Vivian did not stop her, did not expose her, but watched coldly as she gradually built walls, gradually torn the seal apart, gradually drank high-concentration liquor, and ultimately herself smiled and leapt into the frozen hell tailored for her. Vivian. You knew all along. You knew all along. Claire trembled violently, overwhelmed by extreme fear and despair like a rising tide in her heart. She had not only lost her legs, her reputation, her wealth, and the latter half of her parents' lives, but more terrifyingly, for the coming decades she would live in this mountain cottage without heating, without kin, only endless cold ridicule and bone-chilling wind, awake to the despair of tissue death and soul freezing. The blizzard outside roared louder, the wind wailing, as if countless wronged souls whispered at her ear. Claire curled up in the wheelchair, hugging the dangling limbs stuffed with rags, teeth chattering with a tapping sound. In this endless icy world, she would wait for death day after day, and before she closed her eyes, the only companion would be this lifelong inescapable, extreme cold. Sunshine cannot reach here. This is her forever sentence.